And so it begins. I am so thrilled that you came here today to just join us in community and celebrate my birthday. I know that's why you're here. I should have sent an invitation out. We would have got more people, but it doesn't make a difference. All the perfect people are here. And so two of the perfect people who are here, three actually, Michael. He's the roadie. I'm sure he's more than that. But we have Dale and Loretta Hoffman. Dale's going to be giving the talk. And even though it's my birthday, new decade, by the way, if you didn't know, I've said it a few times in the last 3 months. So Dale lost his father. He didn't lose him, but he died on Thanksgiving morning. I just thought, and he texted me and said he still wanted to be here with us. But I just thought it was so appropriate and so beautiful that he would die, leave this form, really, because we know we're eternal, to go into the light and to be the light that he was on earth on a day of great Thanksgiving. I mean, that is such a I think it's a blessing. I don't know how you feel. I feel it's a blessing, and that he's smiling down on you right now, because you're in Westmont, and he lived in Deptford, yeah? Yeah. So, welcome, please, my friend, our friend, Dale Allen Hoffman.
So you knew what to say. Yeah, so it's great to be here on Margaret's 30th birthday. It's awesome. I thought it was 27, but she told me it was a new decade, so I was like, okay, I was off by 3 years. That's awesome. No, it is beautiful. It was, yeah, I was halfway through Planes, Trains, and Automobiles with Steve Martin and John Candy, the movie, on Thursday morning, Thanksgiving morning, after tolerating the Macy's parade for a while and then saying, okay, I'm turning that off. But yeah, and then I got a call, well, I got a text from my sister saying my father's oxygen level was dropping. He had become unresponsive the day before and was talking about my stepmother, who had passed back in 2010, November of 2010, saying, you know, Donna, and talking about Mom, his mother, my grandmother, and that I'm going to be with you soon. He was talking about this light, this beautiful light, of course. And, you know, I love everyone, I love everyone, I love everybody so much. And then as I'm looking at that text and I start to text my sister back, my Aunt Alma calls. Interesting, because the word Alma in Aramaic, when you hear, and I'm just saying this now, when you hear Yeshua say, I will be with you always, even unto the end of the world. First of all, in that phrase, it's Matthew 28:20. It doesn't say, I will be with you. It actually says, Anna will be with Anna, saying the I will be with the I. In other words, the physical eye, or excuse me, the deeper eye, that which sees through, will be seeing through you, even unto the end of the world. The word world is Alma in Aramaic, Alma, which actually means not world as in what we think of, and it doesn't really mean time. The best way I can put that into words is it means like a wellspring. You know, of course, Yeshua, Jesus, talked about that living water. It means something that's just constantly gurgling out, flowering out like a lotus, that's just always growing, always growing, always growing. Yeah, so, and it's been interesting. It's been beautiful because I knew, you know, today was, of course, Margaret's 30th birthday, and so it's not like that forced me to keep this up, but it happened on Gratitude Day, as I call it, Thanksgiving. It just was all perfect, and it was beautiful, and he's been tired, and he just was like, he was falling a lot. And so this word kept coming into my mind that we've heard a lot. It's an Aramaic word. We pronounce it in English as Emmanuel. In Aramaic, it's closer to Emmanuel. And it's a combination, actually I have it here. It's a combination of a few different root sounds. Starting over here, Aman. Iman it's the root word for faith in Arabic today. Aman means kind of like rooted center. Like you put a stick in the sand and you walk around it. So interesting. And what that means, faith doesn't mean something that you have faith that something is going to happen. That's not faith, that's belief. That's different.
Right.
It's very different. Like I have faith that I'm manifesting this or that something's going to turn out right. It's not faith, it's belief. Faith is different. I say to people, faith is when you're coming from that rooted center. Like I always make the example of like Carlos Santana playing guitar and he hits one note and it just kind of hangs there going, you know, or a great piano player and they hit that sort of high note and they just hang on that. Or an artist when they're wide open, or even just the woman down the street scooping ice cream and she's just totally and completely into it. She's so wholly, fully present in the moment that it's laced into everything she does. There's that essence, that awareness. So that's the Aman sound there. And then the U sound is kind of like a mixture of a W, a V, a U, and an O in English, but it's in Aramaic. Okay, what'd you just say? It's kind of a letter that's like a hybrid of all those. And what it means is transformation. It means that something's happened. It means process. There's different ways of interpreting that. And then OL, the L sound in Aramaic means essentially the one. The undivided, we call God, whatever you want to call that. So Emmanuel, just a really powerful tone. You look at it a little bit differently, though. It's like that's usually generally translated in Aramaic, or excuse me, in the Bible, as, it even says that, talking about Jesus, that birth, we will call him Emmanuel, which means God is among us. And of course, everybody looks at that baby and says, okay, God is among us there in that baby, which is kind of like this. It's sort of like, you know, how many, that's kind of nice. How many lights am I holding? It's not a trick question.
One.
One. They're all trick questions. It's me. Everybody's like, yeah. It's not a trick question. So picking one that's the God is like picking one of these little dots in my face. You got it? You got the dot? You're pointing at it now. Okay, you still have your eye on it, right? It's like picking one dot and saying that one's the God light. Not the others, just this one. Does that make sense to you?
Yeah.
That makes sense to find one and it just...
No.
How many lights are there really? It looks like thousands of lights, 9 million or 9 billion on Earth. And how many lights are there really? This is one. And it's funny because the word angel, messenger, in Aramaic, it's angelos, it's malaka in Aramaic, it's angelos in the Greek, was the same word as angle, same root sound, because that's what we are. We are that eternal light that's projected into this manifest universe and refracted all over the place. So when you start looking at this right here, that man, it actually, that iman, uel, that man sound is closer, not so much that God is among us, but literally centered within. God is the rooted center within each and every one of us. So every single one of these lights that you're looking at, that's God. And it's funny because I see people, sometimes they'll go, all right, wait a second, Dale. People that are obsessed with words or math or thoughts. And they'll go, okay, I understand God being everywhere present, but I don't get that God is everything. And I'm like, okay, well, if all of a sudden there was this divine birth and matter became conscious, then are you trying to tell me that somehow that consciousness was separate from that which somehow became awake? And we start looking at things like this miraculous birth over there, not realizing that that's about what's really happening within us. So with my father, it was kind of a challenge. Well, it's been a challenge. And there's been, it's funny because people talk to me a lot, like I do a lot of mentoring with people all over the earth. Every week I'm talking with people in Europe and in Australia, all over the US. And a lot of them say, God, it's like I feel like as I'm waking up, I'm not feeling things to the fullest. Like whatever, somebody passed, and they're like, I feel like I didn't feel it on some level. Am I numbing myself, or am I waking up to the point where it's not grabbing me, you know, not hooking me? And I'm like, well, you have to find that within yourself. It's been interesting with my father, because I've had a few moments where it was like, it would grab, that trauma would kind of start moving, and then all of a sudden I'd be like, wait a second here. It happened on Thanksgiving Day. We knew he wanted to go. He said he was tired. He wanted to be with my stepmother and my grandmother, etc. And I started noticing that when I had the moments, then it pulled me out of that, it was stuff going on here. my thoughts were creeping in. And of course, there's the memories, there's the loss, all of that, etc. And that got me thinking about something Yeshua said about sufficient unto the day are the evils thereof. Nice. Evils. Okay. First of all, that word doesn't mean day. The word's yauma. It has one meaning. It means, there's no actual word for day in Aramaic. Like when you hear, give us this day our daily bread, there's no word day in Aramaic. There's only that word yalma or yalmana, which is in the Lord's Prayer, which means now. It means a moment in time. It could be day, week, month, year. You know when you say back in the day this happened, you're not talking about an exact day. Or in that year, you know, Sinatra, Jersey Boy, it was a very good year. You know, maybe he's talking about a specific year. Maybe he's just talking about a moment in time. So I started thinking about, you know, how fully, wholly present am I able to be in the moment without having to grab all the stuff that's going on in my head, the trauma of loss, the trauma. And then it was funny because that turned into thoughts of, yeah, but isn't that how I honor him, is by being in trauma. I honor him by those heavy feelings of loss. And I started going into that. It was like in that kind of program, it's pulling all these layers of stuff out of me, like, wow. Like as an example, second beatitude is, blessed are the mourners, for they shall be comforted. There, good boy, good girl. What does it mean to mourn? Let's say somebody's passed on. What does that mean? What does it mean? What is the societal meaning of mourning? Someone's in mourning. What does that generally mean? Sadness, grief, loss. You know what mourn means in Aramaic? The word is abvile. It means to essentially back fully into what you're feeling. Allow the fullness of your feelings and emotions without any kind of judgment. You could say passive non-resistance in the Buddhist sense, but that you're allowing the fullness of that and without the judgment. That's easy, right? It's almost impossible because of all of our cultural conditioning. Because, of course, you're not supposed to show too much emotion. You're not supposed to feel too much. Do you understand what I'm saying? And then, of course, we start pulling this back. And I've got a great, amazing, well, I'm going to kind of cap this off first with that. That word for evil, sufficient unto the moment are the evils thereof. That word evil that's used in that case is bishta, or bishte, which is basically bisha. Bisha is the word evil in Aramaic. What does evil mean? They're all trick questions, meaning that, you know, just answer, it's okay. Wicked. Bad.
No conscience.
No conscience.
Wrong thinking.
Wrong thinking. So evil in Aramaic is a very clear term. It didn't make it through into the Greek. When it went into Greek, it was neutered. When it went into Latin, it got worse. When it got into English and all those other languages, it got even worse still. Evil in Aramaic, in Yeshua's native tongue, means unripe. It means either underripe or overripe. So if you've got a stone green banana and it's rock hard, you're not probably going to eat that because you can almost feel the bellyache. If you've got that black, oily, oozing, festering banana, you know, I used this as an example at Spiritual Living Center in Atlanta with David all like 10 years ago, and there's like several hundred people in the audience in Atlanta. And it was like I brought a stone green banana and I brought this black, oily, oozing banana, and I had them both in a bag, and I didn't really think about it, and brought them from Asheville down to Atlanta, and then they were sitting backstage, and I hear people going, where's all these flies coming from? And I hadn't thought about it. So it was funny because I go out there and it was like slop in my hand, and David's like, next time don't bring any rotten bananas, please. But that's, what does that really mean? Underripe or overripe? It means not fertile, not fully ready now, not fully open. What's that?
Not at the right time.
Not at the right time. Think about that. Yeshua says you can throw your seeds onto evil soil, bisha soil, which means that it's under or over. It's a little too soon, a little too late, as opposed to, and of course you can think of the third beatitude, the blessed are the meek. That doesn't mean meek as in shrink back. That word in Aramaic is machike, which is the same word in Lakota, machikeya. And what that actually means is to have an open relationship with the earth, grounding into the earth. The root in Latin would be humus, humility, Not meek as in shrinking back, but expansive. What is humility? What's humus? It's that dark, rich layer of earth that's porous, and it allows, in the words of the Lakota, it allows you to let the wind blow through you. To be able to be in a situation where you're open, there's no resistance, you're not resisting what you're feeling, but you're allowing yourself to consistently ground back into the earth. And I've been having these experiences the last few days because the morrow, the word morrow in Aramaic is mechar, will take care of itself. You know what the word morrow means? It doesn't mean tomorrow. It just means the next moment. Now let me ask you something. Have you ever met the next moment in your life?
No.
Is that possible?
No.
Think about that.
No.
So what was he basically saying? The future will take care of itself. We have all these ideas of birth and death. You know what's a funny thing? All this yakking about afterlife in Christianity, there's no word for afterlife in Aramaic, in his native language. There's a word, bashmaya, which means simply the world that is yet to come, which means the next moment. Now you say, okay, what is, so this is the way people misinterpret so quickly. So people say, okay, so you're saying after you die, there's nowhere to go. I was like, I didn't say that. What I said was there's no word for afterlife because this is not life. What do you mean by that? Let's look at that. This was, you remember that thing? You'd be cast down into a place called Hades and all these different, you know, sort of dark realms. You know where that is? You think it happens after you die? You're actually in it. This is the underworld.
That's what my mother
The
used
fall
to
of
say.
man. There's the fall of man.
Yeah.
And of course we come from that, you know, in the words of Arthur Young, from the inertness of light, the everywhere of light, into the here and now. And that's the fall of man, and this is the underworld. And you just kind of, you fall asleep. But you can actually wake up. You can have that birth by simply being open to whatever is moving right now in this moment. Do you understand what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And it's funny too because there's a place in the Gospel of Thomas where one of the disciples said to Yeshua, "Can you tell us how our end will come?" And I think I've talked about this here before, and it's kind of funny. It doesn't say Yeshua chuckled, parentheses. I think it should have, but because his response was, "Oh, have you actually found the beginning then that now you're looking for the end?" Interesting. And then he said something really profound. He said, "Blessed is the one who takes their place in the beginning," which in Coptic means at the head. Blessed is the one who takes their place in the beginning at the head, for they will know the end, the head, and will not taste death. Let me ask you something. If you're at the head of the line, where are you?
The beginning.
The beginning. Or, what do we love to... It's funny, if I ask this of people outside the United States, they say, well, either end, the beginning or the end. Because here we love to say heads and tails. Right. And of course Yeshua said the first shall be last and the last shall be first. And what this is actually saying is realization that you're looking for this future moment of everybody has this impending death, impending birth. It's funny, in the mentoring that I do with people, so many people are looking for the answers. They're looking for the answer that's going to fulfill some hole. They're looking for a technique. They're looking for something, an idea, a belief that they can put on that'll complete them. Which of course is 100% perfectly opposite. It's backwards. As opposed to what Ernest Holmes said, there's nothing to heal, only truth to be revealed. And I started looking into that a little bit deeper here, and I started thinking about something my dad had said. He had talked about when my grandfather died, Charles Hoffman. This would have been, was at the early 80s, late 70s. He was with, my father was with him. He had had a heart attack, I believe. And he was with him at Underwood Memorial Hospital, which is where I was actually born in 1972. But he said that my grandfather said, don't leave me. I want you to be with me. So, okay, my dad stayed with him. And Dad said he was standing there and he was on a gurney in a hallway, and he's looking down at his father, and my dad said he just had this feeling of peace come over him. He said I was just so here, and he looked down toward my my grandfather, and he said he felt something wash across him, and he happens to look down at his foot, and he watches this little cloud start emanating out of his toe and starts floating up out of my grandfather's foot, and then went like this in the room and just expanded all over the place. And of course he started going, did I just see that? And all that stuff starts coming in. He said it took him decades to acknowledge what he actually saw because of all the judgment that it was in his head. And I was like, I'm not going to cry today, but maybe I will here. And it's not a cry of sadness, but funny that, you know, several months ago I was talking with him about this. Actually, it was a year ago. It was a year ago this weekend. We were here in New Jersey. And he was like, Dale, it was you. It's what you're out there doing that helped me acknowledge that I saw that. And that was a really beautiful experience that without me recognizing that, I probably would have wiped it off and just forgotten about it. Not necessarily pointing at me so much as just about being wholly, fully present in the moment. So I have a little bit of a quote here because, you know, I'm talking about all of this, like this hell stuff, death stuff, but I'm also talking about birth. And there's a choice in there at all times. We were just listening to a dear friend of ours, Lissa Rowe, down in Asheville, who got cancer this year. She was at the first weekend retreat Loretta and I ever offered, and she was at lots of our toning circles in Asheville for years. And she was doing all kinds of affirmations, you know, Center for Spiritual Living there, Barbara and John Waterhouse, they were our ministers for many years. And then there was a certain point in August where she went, okay, she went to the doctors to name it. She wasn't naming it for many months, and then she found out exactly what it was, uterine cancer, etc. And then Barbara shows up, and Barbara reminded her of something. She was like, remember, you've got your diagnosis, but you always have choices. You're always at a point of choice. So Lissa kind of felt everything out, spent some time with it. She's like, okay, I'm going to start doing chemo. And then she did one chemo, and the doctors are coming in telling her this is poison going into your body. Why would they do that? Why would they walk into the room and tell you that we're putting poison into your body? Okay. And she spent some time with that, and she started feeling it through, and she was like, you know what? She started getting signs from her body. I don't want this, what you're doing to me right now. I'm kind of ready. I'm ready. I'm okay with this. So she found her peace with it. And then all of a sudden she was like, wow, now this is interesting. How do I die? This isn't like it's just going to happen. Here, this is a conscious thing that's coming on for the course of weeks and months. And she did this. You look it up. It's on YouTube. It's called This Thing Called Dying from Lissa Rowe. It just looks like Lisa, L-I-S-A-R-O-W-E. Find it. It's on the Center for Spiritual Living's channel. And it's unbelievable. And we were supposed to be there that day. I don't remember what happened. We ended up not being there, which I don't want to say I regret it. I don't regret things, but anyway, it's just a really beautiful thing. And I wanted to read you this. This is from Meister Eckhart, which is cool because Mikey said yesterday to me, he was like, he thought that when I was talking about Meister Eckhart, that I was just giving like great loud to Eckhart Tolle. Just calling him like Meister, but yeah, is it different? This is a, he was German, 14th century, yeah, Dominican, I don't know if that's right, but anyway, interesting little quote here. He says, the only thing that burns in hell, everybody breathing? Good way to start a quote. All right, pause. There is this great church, I had a book of church signs, and there was this great church sign in that book that says, eternity, smoking or non-smoking? There's another one that said, exposure to the sun, S-O-N, prevents burning. I thought that was a good one too. But church signs, the South is full of them, and they're all in King James English. As if somehow Jesus lived in the 17th century. What? So, the only thing that burns in hell is the part of you that won't let go of your life. Your memories, your attachments. They burn them all away, but they're not punishing you, they're freeing your soul. So, if you're frightened of dying and you're holding on, you will see devils tearing your life away. If you've made your peace, then devils are really angels freeing you from your bounds to the earth. Wow. I'm going to put this on YouTube, so if you try to scribble a quote down, you'll be able to get it in a couple of days. But yeah, that's Meister Eckhart. So we have these ideas that somehow in our culture that death is the opposite of life. When I was talking about there's no word for afterlife, what I mean by that is this. The opposite of birth is death. And that's a dualistic experience that we have when we fall down, when we have this fall of man and we're sort of brought down into the underworld. But life, there's no beginning and end to it. It doesn't have a point where it starts here and it ends there. It's that realization that we essentially fall asleep for several decades, 3 decades in Margaret's case, and then it's not really that, I'm trying to support, and everybody keeps laughing, but what I'm saying is this idea that somehow we die is, I'll just say bollocks. I can say bollocks. You know, I know I'm in Jersey. There's another word I want to use, but it's just a complete load of bollocks, the idea of death. Because if you've ever experienced any kind of death, you're in it right now. That feeling of isolation, loneliness, even though you've got that person that could be wrapped around you as you're watching TV every evening and somehow there may be a part of you that's not fully present. Feel like you're not fully there. Think about that. This is death. And it's not a threat. I don't mean it in that way. But what I'm saying is that holding on. You know, we have this holding on. There's a, I'm looking down here thinking about that quote from Thomas again. Blessed is the one who takes their place in the beginning, for they shall know the end and they will not taste death. Where's the beginning? It's right now.
Right.
Where's the end?
Right now.
Right now.
And you now.
Yes. Because you're never going to meet then.
No.
That doesn't mean you take goals out of the picture, you don't plan. I'm not saying that in any way, shape, or form. But what I'm saying is you're doing that from the fullness, the presence of now, rather than trying to do something in the future that you're going to have to get to before you can be happy. That somehow prevents catastrophe, saving for a rainy day. No. Well, there you go. It's raining. Sorry. Snow is coming too. You know, save for a snowy day. So, you know, it just has me thinking. So I wanted to read you something here, you know, in closing. We have this whole Christmas season. And of course, every year I would always say essentially the same thing. Just looking at the Jesus-ness or the physicality of the Jesus story, the Christmas story, let me put something clearly this way. First of all, when it shows up in the 4 Gospels, really in 2 different places, 2 completely different things happened. One puts them in Jerusalem. Why? Because they had to pay taxes. There was no census that year, according to history. The year that they would have been there was no census. It was added later. Okay, but the other time says they didn't go to Jerusalem. They went where? Who knows their Bible? They went to Egypt. They fled. What? Right there in the Bible. But of course we latched on to one of those stories. And of course Jesus was born in a manger. Stable, people say. Manger. He was laid in a manger. So has anybody ever looked at the Christmas story in the Bible and seen the word stable? That he was born in a stable? He's not there. Isn't that fun? Does anybody know where the stable idea comes from? I talk about this every year I'm here.
No, forget it.
St. Francis of Assisi, in the year 1223, created the first what's called presepio, or presepi, which is a manger scene, but he put it in a local Italian context. Local Italian farm, countryside context, so the children would be able to relate to the little baby. Instead of this kid born, you know, 12 centuries earlier, way off, way over there, thousands of miles away. Isn't that interesting? So today we have an idea of that. Well, he was born in the stable because there's no room in the inn. Wrong. So in Greek and Aramaic, that word didn't mean inn. What it meant was the main living area of the home. Funny, Jesus was a what? What was his trade? They didn't have carpenters. You ever been to the Middle East?
Yes.
There's something that's horribly lacking.
Wood.
Wood. The wood that they would get, they would have to get essentially mostly from Lebanon. The word was tekton, which is actually a Gnostic word, which means the architect of the universe. You could say craftsman, etc. So the stable idea, you think that's getting thrown out the window. What the main dwelling area, what was called the inn, was where the family would live in the home, which was essentially a cave. And then there was another passageway that went down, and they would keep the animals at a lower level, which is where Jesus would have been born, because there was no room in the main dwelling area. Not an inn, not a hotel. Why would they put the animals down lower? Yeah, body heat. Of course, with animals, and with body heat from animals, other things would come too. And I guess you just have to deal with it. I don't know if they had exhaust fans at that time. What I'm saying is, we're looking at the historicity of the story, not realizing, as an example, in just in a few days on the 21st, that the star in the east, things happen. The sun is going to drop down. You'll see this on Earth. It would have been seen from the Arabian Peninsula, northwestern Africa, southern Europe at the time of Jesus. Right now you can see it from the Caribbean. It's because of the precession of the equinoxes, etc. Looking at it from the perception of Earth, the sun's going to drop down on the 21st of December onto something called the crux. The southern crux. It's going to die on that crux on the 21st, and it's going to be dead on that cross for 3 days on the perception of Earth. Late on the 24th, early on the 25th, the three kings of Orion's belt, still called the three kings today by astronomers, are going to line up directly. They're going to follow the star in the east, Sirius, the dog star, and point directly at the sun, the only begotten, which is going to move 1 degree off of that cross on Christmas morning. The three kings are going to follow the star in the east to point and locate the newborn son. So what I'm saying is, even the idea of a physical Christmas story is something that is so much more cosmic. We can call it astrological, but today there's a belief system called astrology. 2,000 years ago, it wasn't a belief system, it was life. And they were just very present with it. It wasn't so much about all these things in the head. It was all a part of that cyclic nature of birth and death, birth and death, birth and death. And there could be a reference to that when Yeshua was talking about taking your place in the beginning, for you'll know the end and you will not taste death. That could be a reference to reincarnation as well. So I have one more quote I want to leave you with here, though. This realization that when my mother passed, which was October 10th, 2007, my father was in Deptford Township, just a few miles away. My mother was actually also in Deptford Township, right near the Deptford Mall, in a nursing home. And someone had told me she had cancer, her body was covered. It was like softball tumors all over her body. And someone gave me a great gift in saying, you should get up in the bed with your mother and just hold her in your arms. And my mother was, excuse me, let's just say a butt kicker, even in Sunday translations. My mother was tough. I always tell people, I got my ability to say whatever the I want from my mother. That was my mom. From my father, I got the ability to love wholly and fully with all of my being. And he's been here twice to hear me speak, here. So my father had. But I got up in bed with her, and I gave a message to her that I had heard 2 days earlier at an event at the Center for Spiritual Living in Nashville. I'm getting ready to go up and quote the Beatitudes in Aramaic. And I heard Barbara say, Dale Allen Hoffman, and I walk up, and my mind went blank, and I had no idea why I was walking up on stage. And I had this experience where I'm standing there, and I'm like, okay. And then it was like, okay, wait a second, Beatitudes. So I started reciting the Beatitudes in Aramaic. I was really in a deep place. When I speak, sometimes I get shaky, and it's not because, maybe this is because I had too much coffee, but there's a lot of energy that goes through me. And I got through those first 5 Beatitudes, and I got to the 6th one, and I blanked. And I'm looking around, and I had this voice that I had heard on the way up to the stage that said, it's okay to let go because you can only fall back into me. And it sounded like my voice, but it also kind of sounded like Charlton Heston. Sorry. I'm a Hollywood fan. But, and I heard it again on that this fifth beatitude that I couldn't remember. And then I'm like, you know what? Number one, nobody in the room speaks Aramaic. Number two, nobody's counting. So I can just jump to the next one. And nobody will notice. And then it's like 7, yeah, and I did. It's on the recording of my 5 Layers of Conscious Creation CDs. But, and then like 6 months later, my friend Shauna went, what was the one you blanked out on, Dale? Because I squinted my eyes and I saw just like striations or threads of light in the room. I didn't see the 250 people. And then I closed my eyes again and I opened them and there was a light that I don't feel like I was seeing so much as I was sensing it. And then I closed my eyes again and jumped to the next beatitude. But she was like, what was the beatitude? And I went, oh my God, wait. It's blessed are the pure in heart, for they shall see God. So I want to leave you with a quote here. Also from Eckhart von Hochheim, Meister Eckhart. What good is it to me that Mary gave birth to the Son of God 1,400 years ago, if I do not also give birth to the Son of God in my time